I'm Helen Williams. I'm parkrun at A6014. I'm the event director of Harrogate Junior Parkrun here in the UK, and alongside Vassos Alexander, I'm the co-presenter of the Free Weekly Time podcast. Before we start, I'd just like to recommend that after this conversation, people check out the many parkrun social media channels in the UK and across the world, as well as subscribing to the various parkrun podcasts out there. You'll find me on the Free Weekly Time podcast, but there's also, with me now, Parkrun Adventurers and the 9:30 Club, to name a few others. So Kirsty's just popping in there to say if you've got any questions for Tim, then please do put them in the comments. Hello, Patricia from Portobello. So for today's question and answers, I'm joined by Tim Holtam. Tim co-founded the Brighton Table Tennis Club in 2007, which has since grown into a wonderful community of over 1,500 players a week, including nationally ranked 1, 2 and 3 players with Down syndrome, an over 70s national champion, boys from Afghanistan's Helmand province, a former UK Chinese champion, top junior players from all over Brighton and local club players. And in October 2017, he gave one of the most uplifting TED Talks we've ever seen. Its title, if you want to check it out on YouTube, is How Table Tennis Can Change the World. Welcome. Tim, how are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Fantastic. So, as we were just saying, literally as we just went live, we're asking you how your day's been, and we've had wall-to-wall rain, and you've been out playing table tennis all afternoon.
Yeah, so it was raining here this morning. We're in Brighton, and we can't play indoors yet. So what we've done with our sort of brilliant team of coaches and volunteers is just literally this week, there's 26 outdoor tables across the city, and we're sort of working out where we can have most impact. So outside the club in Kemp Town, there's a couple of tables, and there's a really good opportunity for bringing the community together there. And on the level, which is a minute from my house, it's incredibly convenient. We had 3 tables and so many people playing table tennis today, wiping the bats down in between, when they're changing partners. And yeah, so there's still rules that we have to stick to about, can't play doubles and you have to do it all safely. But yeah, it's nice to be out. And the weather forecast looks good for next week as well.
Well, yeah, which is always good, isn't it? Especially if you want to be outside with it. That's brilliant. And we can talk a bit more about your, plans with how your club is dealing with that. But if we go back to kind of the start, Tim, you've got an incredible drive to make the world a better place. And you really are making a difference with the Brighton Table Tennis Club. Where does it come from? How did that start?
Yeah, I think values must have come from my mum and dad. Thanks, mum and dad. But yeah, I went to some really good schools. Primary school in the Isle of Dogs, in Tower Hamlets, very diverse, and then Pimlico Secondary School, very diverse and proper comprehensive education, and played lots of table tennis in an amazing club in Willesden. They were the national champions of the Senior British League 10 years in a row. Loads of homegrown young players, winning all sorts of competitions, national competitions. And then lots of Caribbean champions, Pan-African champions, Polish, Mexican, just very, very international. And I didn't realise how sort of formative those years were. I think between 11 and 16. I just was there all the time, and that must have, and then I stopped playing table tennis, and then 6 years later I was in Brighton for university and started playing again, and I met Harry McCartney and Wenwei Zhu, and we just said, let's start a little club in the youth centre, 2 odd broken tables, and we were always ambitious. We always knew that table tennis was incredibly accessible, and initially it was just sort of teenagers. Free. It was free, and then after a year we started charging £1, but it was specifically for local young people that wouldn't be able to access those opportunities normally. And then since 2007 we've kind of started working with schools, looked after children, adults with learning disabilities, older people, psychiatric hospitals, the homeless community, prisons, So it's just kind of, it works with everyone. And I think if you it's so accessible. Everyone has played table tennis. I think if you just add a bit of structure and a bit of coaching with people that can engage other people, then it's now become this kind of model of best practice for community integration and social cohesion.
And how did you manage to get the people? So originally, when you started Brighton Table Tennis Club up, how did you engage the community? Because I've said this quite a lot. It seems like one of the hardest things is that first step into participation, and that doesn't change with anything, whether it's running or whether it's table tennis. It's all you have to actually make that first step and get into it. How did you engage with the community to get people to come, even if it was teenagers in the beginning and then it's obviously grown? How did you manage to engage with them?
I think at the very beginning, we promoted it within the youth club, Brighton Youth Centre, and the first session, I think we probably had two young people come, and for many years, I think it was word of mouth. I think it was that they brought their friends and their brothers and sisters, and it was very sort of organic. Now we've got some good processes in terms of, for example, running a primary school after school club. We found that if you go to a school and just go through the sort of normal channels of the school club's coordinator sends a letter out to all the parents, and it's £6 for us to pick up the child and come to the table tennis club, and then the parent comes 2 hours later, or £1 if they're pupil premium. We found that we were only getting the families and the children that could pay £6, because the pupil premium families probably just got loads of those letters and just never even read the attachment of the email. Yeah. So now we go to primary schools and talk to the schools, the heads and the head of inclusion or whichever department is most relevant, and say, look, the families, you can you help do some targeted intervention? So we've got lots of primary school sessions with the sort of children that we really want to engage, and I think we always need to have a mix, but I think we've built some really strong referral networks for definitely our work with refugees, asylum seekers, people with Down syndrome. So I think rather than the table tennis club having that relationship with every single individual, if you can find the key people, then they can get it out to their networks.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like rocket science, but I think a lot of people think, how do we reach these groups? We need to find them individually. But if you find key people that already have those networks, and you get them to buy into the project and the vision, then they, for example, once a month on a Sunday morning, we have a session for children with T21 or Down syndrome, and we've got three. They're 28, 30, and 32. Harry, Chris, and Andrew. And they're ranked number 1, 2, and 3 in England. They were the first 3 coaches in the world with Down syndrome. So they're always there coaching. But then we've got between 15 and 20 children aged 4 to 16 in there, and the parents are there. But having those role models and having all of those, I don't know. I don't think that wouldn't be possible without the support of one key parent of a 9-year-old with T21, and she runs the family support network. So she organises all of that, and she's the trusted face of that network. And so, it's just build those referral networks by finding key people that can, link you into those communities.
Yeah, and you started Brighton Table Tennis Club in 2007, so that's 13 years ago, and obviously that inspiration has come from just wanting to get your community together. But it's interesting because you get those first teenagers, say, at the table tennis club, and then what makes them tell their friends to come with them? Is it table tennis, or is it what they get with table tennis? Because the park run community, all the park runners out there will say it's not necessarily always about the running. So similarly with table tennis, once the kids have come, is it the desire to get better at table tennis that makes them come back, or is it more than that?
Yeah, yesterday I watched that brilliant park run video. I think it's about 2 brothers in Fulham called Gary and Steve. So Rowan, who I've been working with on, interestingly, on prison table tennis and prison park run, but also on this course that we're piloting about building grassroots communities through sport. And I think in that video he says, look, it's a run, it's not a race. And I just think there's so many shared values between the table tennis club and parkrun. We do have, players playing at serious level, but it's our mission statement is BTTC's mission is to inspire everyone to be a champion, instill a lifelong love for table tennis and a positive sense of community within all of our players. So that sense of being a champion is relative. So there's a guy, Robert English, who's in his early 40s. He's been playing for 6 years. When he first came to the club, he needed like an oversized ball. He's only got use of one eye, and he lives in supported accommodation, but he can only hit the ball back 3 times. And 6 years later, with a normal sized ball, he can do forehands, backhands. He can do like 1,000 shots. So he's a champion. He's a champion. That's it's about your personal best. So being a champion is I think is a relative term, and I think parkrun and the table tennis club, there's a lot of shared values about what that means. I do think our 4 values are community, solidarity, respect, and competition. And I think different people place a different importance and emphasis on the values. I don't think the competition ties it all together, because everyone, whether they're where Robert's competing against himself to hit more shots each week, or someone's playing in Division 3 of the local league, or someone's just coming to an all-comer session where you play top table and move up or down, and it's like, okay, I beat him last week, but next week I want to, the competition at all levels is what keeps people coming back. Yeah. Because they want to improve. It's like at parkrun, you want your time to improve. That's right. At table tennis, you want to improve your technique. You want to feel there's no better feeling in the world than I'm getting better at this. That's right. So I think it's not just an inclusive community space. I think the competition is really, really crucial to sort of tying it all together.
Yeah, Mike Thompson's just saying they're great values, which is right. And in the early years of parkrun were incredibly challenging. So what was that like for Brighton Table Tennis Club? Because, that was 13 years ago. So parkrun is only 15. It's in its 16th year now. And that's quite a similar kind of timescale. It's not this quick, it doesn't just grow so quickly. You learn so much along the way. What has that been? What have the challenges been like for Brighton Table Tennis Club?
Well, I think if that's Mike Thompson from Brighton, then his son is a top player at our club, and he's a superstar. And we also have good battles at parkrun on Saturdays. Me and Mike finishing near each other. So I mean, the challenges that the club has faced in the early days, premises. I spoke to Tom actually in December, and we talked about the comparisons between, the similarities and differences between projects, and what parkrun doesn't need is an indoor venue. You just need a park. So the simplicity of it is, the table tennis clubs really need venues, and we're lucky we've got this amazing place in Kent Town now, which was a primary school, and then it was derelict and it was squatted, and it's owned by the Catholic Church, and they gave us keys 5 years ago, and we've had a big refurb. But all of the other grassroots community sports projects that we're working, or we're trying to, we're now building this training with Sport England to help others. The venue is the key, and I think the solution to that is church-owned buildings. So whether it's the Church of England or the Catholic Church or the Methodist Church, or they've got community values and they've got a mission to help their local community, and you're much more likely to get a space, whether it's a church hall or a parish hall or whatever it is, at an affordable price, because schools and leisure centres and everywhere else is it's too expensive really. So the venue, I think that's so important, especially for table tennis clubs. They just need a decent venue, and there used to be 20 divisions in the Brighton League. The post office, the banks, the fire station, the police, they would all have one table, and everyone would go and play league matches in these venues. And it's kind of it's changed. I think it needs to completely be like parkrun has done with running. The whole thing just needs to be reimagined, and I like to think that that's happening.
Well, I think you're definitely changing the face of it. I mean, you know, when we chatted the other day, I played table tennis through my school. I went to a comprehensive school in South Shields, and I was encouraged to go with, you know, some other another girl that I played with, and we went to a hall. It might have been a church, very well might have been a church, but it was. It definitely was. There was an older generation there. There weren't very many young kids. I had to go. It was obvious in the kind of leagues that it was full of the older generation, and that I think there was this push to try and get kids to come through with it. And what does it look like now? If I was going to go into that kind of scenario now, would it look much different?
I mean, where we are, we can have 10 tables up for practice full time. We're open basically from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. 7 days a week, and there's about 450 people coming through our building every week, 50 plus, all those different groups, you know. And then there's opportunities for crossover and for people to volunteer in other sessions, and that's our home venue. So we do 35 sessions a week in there. Similar number of outreach sessions, whether it's in schools or prisons or psychiatric hospitals, and you know, a lot of those sessions incredibly busy. I think it just if you know, the world, you know, people are what make world go round, and people in relationships. If you've got the right people, that they do need to be able to play table tennis and coach table tennis, but if they've got the right values and they've got good people skills, then I think it's infinitely scalable. Table tennis is so accessible. Put a bat in someone's hand, 3 backhands, 5 forehands, 10 backhands, and you can just see them blossom in confidence. You know, it's so easy to learn to play. So you think about it like a very low floor and a high ceiling. So it takes really, really years to get really good. Everyone can play table tennis, and you know, some of the other table tennis clubs, I'll never forget. About 3 years ago, I took some players to play a league match in this one table venue against a team of older players that had been in the same team for years, and some teenagers were running on the roof of this hut, and the players that was their home venue were like, oh, just let's just not make any noise, and hope they go away. Let's not let them know we're in here. And I went outside, and the youth club was 15 meters away from the community centre, and I went in to have a look, and they were playing table tennis in the youth club 15 meters away. And I went back over and I told the team there, and I said, did you know they're playing table tennis now? And they went, don't tell them we're in here. Yeah. So I'm like, well, this is why, you know, that's just sort of, this that symbolised for me, that's why table tennis, when it's run like that, isn't going to continue to thrive. You know, you can moan about it, you know, the good old days when we had loads of local league teams and divisions and stuff. It's like, well, it just needs to be reimagined. So yeah, and I think there are lots of examples of great projects where there's loads of young people playing table tennis. But it does feel sometimes like we're pushing out a bit of an open door in terms of doing table tennis in prisons. The International Table Tennis Federation have got a foundation, sort of social arm, and there are some projects. There's some great projects in France, Germany, Uganda, doing different things. But someone from the ITTF said to me last week that there's nothing in the world doing the sort of scope that we're doing. And I just think, well, why hasn't anyone gone into prisons where table tennis is already on every landing of every wing of every house block, and done like structured coaching, do coach education in prisons? And we've been at Highdown Prison for 3 years. Had to stop for lockdown. And Downview Women's Prison next door, where I met Joe Sinton-Hewitt and Kirsty 6 months ago. And the impact it's had in the prisons is just absolutely phenomenal, because they're already playing table tennis on the wings. So they come into the sports hall in Highdown. It's like 16 tables in this massive gym. Over 100 of them have done a coaching qualification. And then for the rest of the week, they're on the landing teaching the rest of the prison how to play table tennis. So, you know, I think there's an 83% reduction in red entries, which is like, you know, drugs or violence or problems of all the participants of the table tennis course. So there's, you know, I think there's huge potential to do that internationally in prisons. And then when people come out of prison, what currently doesn't exist is anything like the network of parkrun, where you come out of prison, you go to your local parkrun, it's kind of this is the welcome that all parkruns must give.
Yes.
And table tennis clubs are a little bit more hit and miss.
It's trickier, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes, but you're already making those inroads, aren't you? And you're making the changes, and that will come with time, won't it? And let's talk about the diversity that you've got, because you really have got, a massive whole swathe of diversity, and you've been really successful. How have you managed to do that?
Yeah, I think there's something to do with no one's told us to do it. It's not come from outside. It's kind of, we just thought this is so for about 7 or 8 years, the demographic of the club was nearly all sort of white British teenagers, most from disadvantaged backgrounds. And I think that meant we were very embedded in the community. We had the trust of the local community. And then through the virtual school for children in care, we started doing sessions for looked after children. And then through that sort of referral network, we got an amazing 15-year-old from Vietnam who was a victim of trafficking, who 5 years later, he's still involved with the club, and he learnt to speak English, and he did his coaching qualification, and that was he was the first asylum seeker that got involved. And since then, mostly young boys from all over the world, they've come in. No one's asked them where they're from. It's like, what's your name? Treat people, as individuals. And I think it's to do with sort of authenticity. And not in Germany. There was a national program, like a government program of integration through sport. So there's, lots of Syrians and other people there from 2016 onwards. And the government said, okay, integration through sport. So it's like a top-down initiative, which is flawed. Whereas if it's grassroots from the bottom up, everyone comes in, and then it's just sort of, well, it works with this group, it works with this group. Do sessions with Irish travellers, and you've got coaches that have Down syndrome and are asylum seekers and all different ages. And I think what it feels like in the table tennis club is just that the presence of all of those groups has just been normalised. Yeah. So it's just a reflection of Brighton,
of community,
which isn't. Yeah. Which is a reflection of the community, and Brighton isn't as diverse as London or Bristol or Manchester, but in some ways, but wherever you are in the country, if you're in rural Wiltshire, there is diversity, but it might be intergenerational. It just look different. So I think getting all these different groups in the mix, I think you can do it anywhere. It can be done anywhere. It just needs to be. It's about founding principles and values and authenticity.
And I think once you
not patronising people.
Yeah, and I think once you have a community where there is no question, like the parkrun community. I saw somebody say there were the similarities again to parkrun are huge, and I think that's right in that you have a community who've come together because they want to be together, and you can get what you like out of your community. You can take friendship from it, you can get faster, so similarly to table tennis you can get better. Ultimately you can just have company, or you can come, be with like-minded people and then leave. And I guess the diversity which crosses the board with parkrun and prisons and trying to get into socially deprived areas and trying to help those the people who really benefit from it. It feels like, sorry, I can just hear a real life tantrum going on in the house.
I might have one in a sec.
I can actually, you might hear the screams from here. Sorry, been waylaid. But yes, that diversity, I think that normality of just being around people makes the massive difference. So when you've got kids or the older generation who are coming in and it's just full of diversity, it must just be a really safe place to feel. And I think that's a lot of people have said parkrun is a really safe environment. They don't feel like they're just coming to be with people. And I guess that's what you've got with the table tennis club.
When you come in, there's like really beautiful colourful photos everywhere. It's a very welcoming environment, and there's everyone gets welcomed. And someone described it as ordinary magic. So it's just something really simple. It's just like table tennis. but it's, there's all this other stuff. Paul Richards, who's a bit of a hero from a project called Gig Buddies, and they started in Brighton, well, not that long ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, but there's a bit more history to it than that. And they match up volunteers once a month. You go to a gig with an adult with a learning disability. So you've got a Gig Buddy participant and a Gig Buddy volunteer. And he's doing this training with Rowan, and he's giving lots of good feedback. And he said that someone had described his project and charity as a Trojan horse project. So it's he said that the table tennis club could be seen like that. It's a table tennis club, but there's all this other stuff happening. It's more than a table tennis club.
Yeah.
And if he said your table tennis club was called the Kemp Town Centre for Citizenship and Social Justice, it doesn't sound very exciting. People wouldn't come, and it just wouldn't work. But if it's the table tennis club, people come. And I'm not sure I agree with that. And someone else then said it could be described more like a chameleon project, because people come to it and it's so adaptable and flexible. They can dip in for 2 hours a week, a bit like a park run, or they can come and volunteer, or they can do more. And there's fair share. People can take food home, and there's a community cafe now next door. So yeah, I think a chameleon or a Trojan horse. A Trojan chameleon, maybe.
And it's the sense of belonging, isn't it? It's to feel like you're actually wanted somewhere. So once your community gets to know you, the importance of actually being wanted is just what humans need. We need that interaction. It's why lockdown's really hard, right? Because we're not with our families and our friends and our communities, and ultimately, really, all we need is a basic sense of belonging. And I guess for people who have come from difficult backgrounds where they don't feel like they belong anywhere, when you find the thing that you click with, whether that's running, table tennis, climbing, sailing, rowing, we've spoken to a massive range of people, athletes. It does feel like we all need to belong somewhere. And once we have that, we've got family, haven't we? We've got people who care.
Exactly. And the park run is often talked about in those terms, isn't it? The park run family. And I think that concept of ohana, which is a brilliant word, it's a Hawaiian concept of extended family, where no one is forgotten and no one gets left behind. And it is just like a huge extended family where people are, the depth of relationships. In 2014, this was to keep my wife sweet, I moved to Bristol, and it was meant to be for permanently. And literally 6 weeks later, I handed my notice in my teaching job down there, and we came back here because it was the depth of relationships that I didn't have there. It takes a long time to build that community. I think the training course that we've just built, we've been kind of forced to pilot it online. The plan was for it to be face to face and potentially some of it online, but because we've all been in lockdown, we've done 6 weeks or 5 weeks, and it's a 7-week course. The first module is called Breaking the Mold, and it's about innovation. The second mold is being outward facing, building referral networks and community. The third module is relationships, rapport, retention, reflection. Module 4, what does integration mean? Module 5 is the axes of grassroots and performance sport. And then module 6 is going to be testing an idea. So Rowan, who works for Parkrun, has got Ramsbottom Running Club. There's a table tennis club in Derby. There's a few local martial arts and football projects. They're doing that course, and it's been so interesting just talking and sharing ideas with all of those groups. Yeah. And the fact that it has worked online, we think that it can be scaled quite easily. And it's not about table tennis. It's not even all about sport. I think it applies. It's about building grassroots communities. Yeah. And it applies to any community. So yeah, if people are interested, then we've only doing the first pilot, but we're hoping we can do another pilot, and then that's going to be some training, like accredited training for people to do and find out more about what we've done, and hopefully take some ideas and be inspired to do some interesting things. Like, people ask us, can you give us some tips on working with refugees, or tips on working with people with T21? And we've got to the point where it's like, well, we weren't experts on any of those areas.
Yeah.
But it's about values that underpin everything. And it's almost, if you give someone a fish, then they're okay for a day. But if you give someone the means to fish, then they can hopefully. We're hoping that it's going to inspire a lot of ripples and a lot of projects, and that, internationally. Probably
Big
not on the
plans.
scale of parkrun.
Well, hey, why not? Tell us about it. Are there any
beast.
are there any specific points in your journey that stand out to you that you're particularly proud of? I mean, it sounds like there are lots, but the ones that really stand out for you.
I feel like I've got about a 5-second memory, so this afternoon was brilliant. It's been sitting at my desk for 3 months, and the last week we've been talking to the local community in Kemptown outside the club. We had a residents meeting, a residents consultation, and the Real Junk Food Project, who are unbelievably good. They on a Wednesday they do a community meal for about 60-80 people. Quite in the same building as us now. So, we've just made the introductions between the church and the Junk Food Project, but there's plans now for like a £500,000 refurb of this parish hall, and they're going to be in there full time from next year. So we can have big events and exhibition matches with a huge food offer there. But outside there's all this grass, which until 3 years ago was just like dog mess corner. And now there's a table tennis table on there. And now we're going to put some deck chairs out there and maybe some more trees and chess tables and make it really, really nice. So that was yesterday. And then today we've just been on the level, probably had, 30 or 40 people playing down there today, spread out, obviously.
Are they all your people, or will you get somebody?
No. It was all basically all street drinkers. And the level has been a bit of a problem area in Brighton for a number of years now. And I just walked through it. There's a big skate park there, and there's a lot of dealing and a lot of problems. And there has always been a table tennis table there, but the guy who runs the cafe there said the police wanted to take the table away because it's attracting the wrong people. And we're just going to go down there and just flood it with a bit more of a positive atmosphere. They're all still welcome, but it's just pro-social behaviour as opposed to anti-social.
It's funny. Table tennis is such it's kind of a nostalgic thing to do, isn't it? For the people who are there, street drinkers say, they're all going to have had some table tennis experience. It is, like you say, something everybody's done. A bit like if you've ever run, you'll have run at school, you might have really hated it and not come back to it. But park run, similarly, the similarities are huge in the way that
I think so.
It's something that everybody's done at some point, more or less.
I'd never done 5k run before last April, and now I've done 28. 20. But I think a lot of the people that play table tennis on the tables outside, there's a bit of a sort of revolving door between prison, living on the street, Millview, the psychiatric hospital. There's table tennis in all of those places. So it's very sort of institutional, youth clubs and prisons, and sort of you have a pool table and or a table tennis table, and it's just for recreation. But if you can build links with strong community clubs, there's just such a huge potential for
it's focusing that attention, isn't it? It's bringing it into its own community.
All these people on the outdoor tables, they were so happy today, and they're there. There's only one table there normally. We've had a couple more tables there. We're going to be there every day in the summer when the weather's nice, and then when the summer's over, they're all most welcome to come play indoors. So it's I have thought about that park runs terms about if there's people involved in the table tennis club. I mean, there's been park runs last summer where we've had 30 people from the table tennis club all doing park run, and some of the players with Down syndrome doing it, and we've all loved it. But there are lots of people that come to the table tennis club that I think we should get to do park run. They just don't realise yet that how good it is.
I guess, do you get the same kind of... the beauty of park run is obviously you can volunteer, you don't need to run, you can walk, you could skip, your kids don't need to run it, or everything from like you've got 4-year-olds all the way up to, did you say you had a 98-year-old or something? You had
100. Actually, Betty's just turned 100.
Amazing.
And you can play. You can give a 1-year-old a bat and a balloon, and they can just sort of knock it up. So, I think you just have to differentiate it for everyone.
Do you get that volunteer community there? Can you, because I think one of the things that has been great for Park Run is that once people realise they might not want to walk it, or they're not so sure about it, that participation, that kind of, once they've gone in and volunteered and then just seeing that everybody's just there, just, you know, that's made a massive difference. Do you get kids or older people that come in and go, oh, actually, I don't have to necessarily play straight away?
We've got only since September, we got a little bit of funding from the Tudor Trust so that we could employ a volunteer coordinator, and Charlie's come in, made such a big difference just to harness and utilise the volunteer potential and the capacity, because there were always volunteers, but we just sort of celebrated for volunteers. We've got 71 active volunteers, and I told Rowan the other day, I said, Park Run may have more, but our ones, we've got it's about quality, not just quantity. But there's some unbelievable people on that list from, well, just very diverse. It reflects the club, but I think there's a lot more potential. And I think as people find out about the club, we are quite selective about who volunteers, but and until not that long ago, if someone couldn't play table tennis, only a little bit, but it was like, well, no, we just need volunteers that can help in the sessions. But actually, we need someone to help with the website. We need someone to help with, there's all sorts of different roles now that our volunteers are fulfilling. And yeah, we couldn't survive without them. They're amazing.
Yeah, and it's the need to be needed, but also a purpose as well. People need a purpose, don't they? So
exactly. So it's a two-way. It's mutually beneficial. Yeah,
absolutely. So with lockdown now, obviously, you've just said that you can't hold any clubs inside, but I'm guessing with the tables outside, that's it. You're going to just move outside for a bit all the time the weather's good, and that's how you'll kind of move on in the perimeter with lockdown at the minute. Is that right?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, hopefully by September there will be the next phase. We can have limited club activity, which we think what we mean for us is, instead of having 10 tables in the halls where we are, we'll be able to have 4 with barriers in between and controlled. And we've been in Highdown prison every Tuesday for 3 years, and it's been really, we love going in. We go in minibus. We go up in minibus about an hour from Brighton, minibus full of volunteers and a couple of paid coaches, and just go into the 2 prisons, and we go for breakfast in the cafe and go into the prisons, and then the relationships are so good between everyone in the prison, and yeah, we miss going in, and we're just a bit of solidarity with them, really. I think it must be quite hard in there at the moment.
It's so hard, isn't it? Just everybody wants everything reopened, and what about future goals then, Tim? What are your future goals before we move on to the viewer questions? We've got lots of them for you.
Well, I know this sounds, I don't know what this sounds like, but what I want is the BTTC in Kemp Town, which has been our full-time venue for 5 years. I want that to be seen as like the mecca for grassroots table tennis and sport in a few years' time, because there's going to be community cafe there, which is on a pay-as-you-feel basis. It's food waste, pay-as-you-feel, so it's just social cohesion like you've never seen as well in the cafe, and then the table tennis club there, and the grass outside with an outdoor gym and some chess tables, and just the whole community involved. And I hope, we've talked about how the blueprint could be shared, and I think this training that we've built, I really hope that it will lead to lots of other ripples and lots of other martial arts groups in Doncaster or wherever, thinking, it is possible to reimagine what like Parkrun has. Things need reimagining. The old models, the old model of a lot of sport is obsolete, as we know, and we need new projects and new people to come in and show the way, I think. And I think Parkrun have been a big inspiration for us. Parkrun have been massive inspiration. The running charity, Good Gym, Gig Buddies, the Real Junk Food Project, they're not sports specific, but one uses music, one uses food, and they're all just the vehicles, you know.
And they're all just communities. We say just, but
Exactly.
they are communities, aren't they?
They're all communities.
They're what
Yeah.
people want, aren't they? So let's go on to the viewer questions. We've got quite a few, which is nice. Laura White asks, well, she says, she loves that you've taken the table tennis initiative inside some prisons. What are your thoughts on sport for rehabilitation and reducing re-offending?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, we've worked with, you know, the pupil referral unit and young people at risk of getting into trouble with the police for years. And I just remember the first time I went into Highdown, I just thought, this is the best in terms of the potential of what could be done. And everyone who comes in with us just, yeah, it blows you away, because you start playing table tennis and you forget instantly you could just be anywhere with loads of people playing table tennis, having fun. We've done quite a little bit of work now with Rosie Meek, who's a professor who's written some reports for the Ministry of Justice about, she's sort of the academic expert on sport in prisons and sport for rehabilitation. So she's written a few really good books and reports about sport for rehabilitation and, you know, reducing reoffending. And the Alliance of Sport as well, who's James Mapstone and Justin Coleman. They're doing some really interesting work. I just think it's just such a simple and cheap, cost-effective way of stopping people going back inside.
Yeah.
If you can, you know, or stopping them from going inside in the first place.
Absolutely. I mean, we spoke to John McAvoy quite a few weeks back.
I watched that. I watched it. Yeah.
He said exactly that. You know, it's really important to have something to hold on to for when you come out, I suppose, isn't it? To be able to see you can move away from where you've been.
Yeah. So ideally, you know, prevention's better than cure, and you meet all these young people when they're 10 or 11, and you're further upstream. But what I do think is a real possibility is to, and we've done this on a sort of pilot basis, but is to meet particular people in prison that can play a bit, or you can teach them to play a bit and coach, and then under supervision, done, you know, in controlled conditions, when they come out, they're the perfect mentors for the young people at risk of being in trouble with the police. And a few people said, you know, it's a good idea, but I don't think you'll be able to get that through sort of safeguarding, you know, safeguarding guidelines. And you can get it passed, because it's under supervision. You know, it's done. You don't just let any. You know, you carefully choose the prisoners.
Of course,
look at what's on their records and stuff. And yeah, I just think there's a massive potential to you then be benefiting the people coming out of prison. And when that first happened, a prisoner from Highdown who moved to Ford, which is a Category D open prison, and he's coming over to Brighton on a full-time work placement. He's just an amazing guy, so positive, and everyone loved him. And then his story for the prisoners in Highdown, they're like, so what? They just think that they've been written off. And you say, no, this is happening. This is something. If you get into Ford, or if you get out of here, you know, there is a potential for you to be working. Most of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have been to the pupil referral unit. They grew up in the. Yeah. So for them to go back and use table tennis, so it's not, what it isn't is, you know, getting an ex-prisoner, going to speak to children and saying, you know, don't misbehave because you'll end up inside. It's, I'm going to teach you table tennis, and then the relationship's built. 6, 8, 10 weeks later, by the way, I was inside, and then there's a connection, and you're just infinitely likely more to listen to that person.
Absolutely.
Rather than just think,
this
is
you're not being
another lecture.
Yeah, definitely. Tom Rutter says, how did you first get into table tennis yourself?
In a youth club in the Isle of Dogs when I was in primary school, where my dad was the local vicar and my mum was the teacher, and there was a little table tennis club in the youth club there, and then in the secondary school we used to go and play there. Yeah, so yeah, really good memories. I think the first, anytime anyone is given a bat for the first time, or your first experience of playing table tennis and your associations of it, if it's friendly, if it's with someone who's friendly, positive, gives you a bit of time, and you will always remember that. And I think, unfortunately, that's not always the case. You've got a lot of table tennis clubs where, I don't know, it's not that welcoming, and beginners, particularly adult beginners, there just isn't a session for them to go to. If you can't play it in the league teams, it's like, well, there's not. Yeah. So yeah, I just think it's really important that your first impression is a good one.
Is a good one, yeah, definitely. Forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong, but we have Peryo Johnson who says, do you ever play tennis without a table?
I've just ordered a racket. I have an old one, but we've been playing a little bit in the park. Not very good, but I spent nearly 200 quid on a tennis racket, and my wife said that's just what happens when you get old and overweight. Just start blaming your equipment. So yeah,
brilliant.
I love tennis. I do love tennis, but yeah, I don't play enough.
So you do, but not quite as much. Jill Markland asks. She says, I love what you're saying about support networks. Do you think enabling people and filling them with confidence is key to success?
Yeah, of course it is. It's great to see people coming in. Since September, we've had an amazing full-time, she's our head of development, and she's a full-time coach, but Teresa Bennett, she played for England, her brothers played for England, and her sons played for England at a serious level. But she was a PE teacher for 30 years. Unbelievable experience, wealth of experience, values, people skills, and table tennis skills just through the roof. And she's running a women's session with about 30 or 40 women come in. There's only 10 tables. It's just packed before lockdown, obviously. And some of those women that have come in from outreach sessions and come into Teresa, they're now all volunteering, helping with, all kinds of stuff at the club. And it's just watch them blossom since September under Teresa's guidance. It's just such a good role model. But yeah, if you trust someone, you give them a bit of responsibility. I think that's a really important thing that we've done without really being conscious about it, is if someone's good at fixing tables or making videos, then you say, all right, well, that's your responsibility. And that gives people a sense of, all right, well, I've got to do this now. This is my bit. This is my responsibility. It's that co-production and
that sense of
autonomy.
Purpose, isn't it?
Yeah. And then it's like, well, stuff it snowballs. Whereas if a lot of table tennis clubs are one-person operations, everything has to come through one person, and you're completely limited with what you can do. As soon as you say, all right, well, you're the caretaker and you can do the videos and please, then yeah, more stuff happens,
Confidence is key.
And then, yes, so someone, this is a good quote. Someone said, to build a resilient community, people talk about resilience, but it's not about individual resilience, but to build a resilient community, you need to, first of all, give people a sense of belonging and make them feel welcome. And then the second step is give them an opportunity to make a positive contribution. Genuine, not a tokenistic one, but a genuine positive contribution. And we've seen that happen with countless people. And it's not like 1, 2, but it's like a circle, because the more virtuous circle, the more people are making that positive contribution, the more belonging they feel. And it's, yeah, I thought that was a nice way of framing it.
Yeah, that is a great way. Stacey Ann says, your work on inclusivity is inspiring. Do you have plans to branch out into anything other than table tennis?
Well, this has been a conversation happening for years about is the model replicable? You can't replicate people, and I don't think you should, but you shouldn't want to try and do that. We talked about building a network of table tennis clubs with inclusive values and shared values, and it did feel a little bit like trying to fit square pegs in round holes, because each table tennis club has its own identity and its own values and journey, and they're all at different stages. And yeah, so what we've come up with is this building a grassroots community course that we're hoping Sport England and the ITTF and Table Tennis England and others will promote and endorse. Parkrun could endorse it, that'd be good. But building a grassroots community, and instead of not because it's better or worse, just because it's a different model. Parkrun is 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, 5k. This is how you do it. This is parkrun in a box. This is it, and it's unbelievable. But almost if you if you turn that upside down, what we would like is to say to people, look, these are our values that underpin everything we do. Share our values, and then say, look, we don't want to have any sort of franchise or any sort of network or it's not an expansion of us, but it's just a sharing of value, like open source, completely just be generous with everything we've learned and any sort of intellectual property we've got. We're happy to sort of to a degree share that and see where that leads. And then we do want to, and I think we've already met a couple of projects, one local martial arts club, which are just unbelievable, and a lot of the stuff we've got in terms of infrastructure and just that side of it, we can help them with that. We can support them with the bookkeeping or whatever, but they've got what it takes to really increase their impact. So we do want to help other sports, and we do want to sort of see things happen that are ripples from hopefully ripples, but it wouldn't be us having ownership of it.
But it's a bit like people look at parkrun and the model of it and just see that it works so brilliantly for everybody that's involved. It's it's not been rocket science. They kind of jump us for goalposts. They've never tried to make it something other than as easy as possible to make it accessible for people. And I guess that's what makes what you're doing and online stuff that you can access means that you can move that in, and people can share that in the areas that they need to kind of just use it in every day. I mean, if everybody used that kind of stuff in what they learn in workplaces, everybody would be a lot happier, wouldn't they, generally, rather than being on a little rat wheel. Patrick Juice says, how can you hold off the influence of commercialism and money in grassroots sport?
Patrick Juice, I was born in Lincoln, and Patrick Juice is my oldest friend. I lived in Lincoln till I was 2, and he's a week older than me. And he does parkrun in Sheffield now.
Is he faster than you or not?
I don't think so. I don't know if this could be shared, but I published something about 2 months ago on the Brighton Table Tennis Club blog. It's on our website, and I've got a little wobbly going on now as well. And it's called the title's called The Power and Potential of the Power and Potential of Ping Pong and Park Run. And there's a whole bit in there about commercialism. So John Kaufman, who's my hero, ran the London Progress in London, and Park Run, the sort of founding principles and values is, it's not about Premier League football, it's the opposite of that. It's the antithesis of that. I think I'd like to think that we've got to where we've got to with a profile locally and increasingly national profile, and we've still held on to our founding values and principles and our authenticity. And I just think it's about the values. I think you don't have to sell out. I think sometimes if you've got a model that works and you want to see it scaled, it very quickly gets quite corporate and it loses its original essence.
And what you're doing,
that's a real danger.
Yeah, and what you're doing is working, isn't it? So it's you can let other people do.
Yeah, exactly. It's about grassroots. It's about local communities doing it for themselves, rather than anyone saying it's just bottom up. Yeah. Grassroots, and it's just it's not rocket science, but I think that has all kinds of benefits to people being more physically active, better mental health, stronger communities, and then those resilient communities, I think, is incredibly important way of bringing people together to counter the sort of the fear of the unknown and the sort of hate that is being fed people through certain social media channels. And there's so much division, and there's so much polarization and division. I think grassroots community projects, sports projects, have got real power to bring people together. You've got all these different groups playing table tennis together, and they're looking at the front of certain newspapers, front pages, and they're saying, well, I know that that's a nonsense because of my personal experience.
Yeah.
So I think it just needs to be grassroots and bottom up. And I do have to say that Sport England seem to be in complete agreement with that. I think the people running Sporting and making the decisions at the top, they're really progressive.
Brilliant.
I think.
Hope that answers your question, Patrick, even though Tim's faster than you. Lee Christopher says, did you do some work with the school in Bristol a few years ago? So you did say you were in Bristol, but not for very long.
Yeah, no, I feel bad because I moved to a school, brilliant school, Fairfield High School, and it's so diverse, so international, multicultural, brilliant. And yeah, we moved to Bristol, and I just missed everyone in Brighton so much that I did 10 weeks and moved back to Brighton. But yeah, I do love Bristol.
So you're luckily you got to see Tim for 10 and at some point in those 10 weeks. So we've got a final comment from Brandon Duke, who I'm guessing you'll know, and he says, you'll never walk into BTTC, so Brighton Table Tennis Club, and be judged. Everyone is made to feel welcome, and everyone is there to have fun and enjoy themselves, which is brilliant. Thanks so much for your time this evening, Tim. Really
Thanks,
enjoyed
Brandon.
chatting to you. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in. You can catch up with Tim on Twitter. He's there on Twitter via at BTTC official if you want to see what he's up to. Any questions that you think haven't been answered and you want to know more, then give him a tweet. Do check out the many social media channels in the UK and across the world, as well as subscribing to the various parkrun podcasts out there. Now, more than ever, it's important that we all come together and support each other. So the Parkrun family and Brighton Table Tennis Club are there for us all, and we will get through this together. Thanks a lot, Tim. Take care.
Thanks, Cheers.